everyone, and welcome to Titan Talks, an event by Titan Capital where we talk to exceptional founders who are creating a better world through their innovation. Throughout this podcast, you'll learn from creators and thought leaders who are bringing disruption to the Indian and global startup ecosystem. We hope this event will help you learn about how to innovate, scale, and build a sustainable business.
All the speakers will come and speak a bit about their business.
So Shadowfax, hi everyone. We started 7 years back. We are today one of the largest crowdsourced logistics platforms in the country. And when we say crowdsourced, we essentially mean that basically every delivery person that we work with today is working on a sort of a per order kind of a model rather than on a payroll sort of a model which the industry typically operates on. Today we are there in close to about 900 cities. We deliver close to 1.5 million shipments on a daily basis, and all of our deliveries happen typically through a motorbike. Okay, and these are all like end customer deliveries that we work on. So we built a pretty scalable network across cities of the country, and I think the platform over the period of time has been growing at 100% year-on-year pace. And again, as you would believe, that the huge potential generally in the end customer commerce space that we are seeing in India, especially between COVID and now. I think as an organization, we have grown almost like 4x in the last couple of years. So been quite a crazy journey in delivering some of that. And I think bringing in some sort of a B2B context. So it's an enterprise heavy model. So we work with large enterprises where basically as an enterprise, you can integrate with our APIs. You want last mile delivery to be done, and we provide this last mile capacity over a cloud. And you want intercity delivery, intracity delivery, anything that you want, we essentially service that as a key offering. I think as we go into this conversation, one of the key learnings that I've had over a period of time, and this is something which probably a food for thought for everyone as we get into this conversation. See, B2B is a very different world. It's a very different plus interestingly difficult world as well, where essentially in this conversation, from day zero, from first conversation, you have to actually start making money. This is not a space where any investor funds for you to make loss on a per transaction basis. And I think one of our biggest insight over a period of time learning what we have done is that how do you make money? How do you run a very frugal, tight setup? And that without burning cash, how do you create a growth model? Because that's the real value if you're creating. So if you're burning money, trust me, everybody will come to you. They'll want to work with you. The moment you increase prices, people are going to run away. So I think in this conversation, I generally want to bring this thought upon. I feel this is my biggest learning till date and something to ponder upon as we basically get into the B2B context as well. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhishek. We come to detailed questions. We have prepared because I and you coordinating since almost last 7 years at Titan, like since your seed stage, and we share a lot of memories. So I will be more candid on our questions. So next is Ashwin from XFlow. Ashwin, maybe you can just give 1 minute intro about XFlow. Rest we cover in the Q&A we are doing.
Yeah, sure. Hey folks, my name is Ashwin. I'm the co-founder of XFlow. XFlow is basically a full stack company that is looking to solve the problem space represented by cross-border payments. So like a very simple summary is, we're not interested in building the next TransferWise, but we are very interested in building the infrastructure that powers the next hundreds of TransferWises, right? That's really sort of like what we're up to. That's it. Back to you.
Yeah. So next is Bharat from Xhipment. Maybe Bharat, you tell a minute about what is Xhipment.
Great. So, hey everyone, and thanks Bipin for inviting me. Very, very happy to be here. So I'm Bharat. I'm one of the builders at Xhipment. We are a digital freight forwarder and supply chain platform. And we are simplifying cross-border shipping across both ocean and air modes. We partner with MSMEs, both importers and exporters, and help them move their goods globally. We are a full stack freight forwarder where we provide the end-to-end service to our customers, and looking forward to this chat. Thanks.
Yeah, Pawan, now it's your turn. So
hey,
what
Bipin.
Doing at Fasinza and how Fasinza solving problem of businesses. But
Sure.
You have only 1 minute.
No, I'll take only 30 seconds. Don't worry. Hey everyone, I'm Pawan, co-founder and CEO of Fashinza. We are a B2B marketplace that helps fashion brands connect with manufacturers. Our real value proposition is we help more mid to enterprise level fashion brands like somebody like a Zara Group or Beavercoop and others to actually be able to work with small to mid-sized factories, wherein all these factories have been completely digitized by us. And we are a full stack provider for apparel. So effectively, we become the final supplier of garments to the customers. And that is how we help the customers sell better and bring velocity to their businesses.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pawan. So the first question is very what Abhishek concluded his intro part, and he was just about to jump into that, and I pulled him because the question is already prepared for him, which is I remember completely. Abhishek is pure Bania person. He speak, and then you will see when he makes sales. You can see the fire coming out of his mouth. That kind of aggression and passion he has. I have been seeing him since the seed investment we did in 2015 early, and like B2B, I have seen you need to be a very salesperson. In fact, even like you can't just rely on hiring salesperson. Even founders need to be very good at sales, and that I have seen at Abhishek, my journey with Abhishek Bansal at Shadowfax. So my question is, Abhishek, when you started, it was purely, I remember hyperlocal, 1 hour delivery of Pizza Hut was one client, I remember. And then Big Basket was one client. And then with time you cracked Domino's also. This is 15-16 story. And then eventually, and you created your own niche in logistics B2B. Because अगर आप भी बोलते मैं वही करता हूँ जो ब्लू डार्ट करता है, डिलीवरी करता है, तो फिर niche carve नहीं हो पाता. And then, but eventually within like 3 years, by 2018, you were doing almost everything. So how has been your transition and the challenges you faced, and how was that journey? Like only the key highlights which you would like our audience to know.
I think, see, when we started our journey, I think the whole idea was, do people even want to outsource their logistics? And in B2B, typically, a lot of companies that we have seen often fight with this dilemma where somebody is doing it themselves, and you actually end up convincing them that oh, you don't need to do it yourself. You need to probably trust on a completely independent third party to probably do a job better than what you have been doing maybe for the last 10, 15, 20 years. So I think the initial journey was all about proving it as a concept. It was not about unit economics. It was not about anything else. It was just about, can you deliver a great experience if you are an independent third party? Can you take your client as seriously as probably they do it themselves? I think that was the first couple of years of our journey. We were just trying to prove it as a concept. I think the second phase of the journey was around proving efficient unit economics. And as I earlier said, see, if you're doing it at a losses, it is very easy to grow in this business. Okay, you go to a Domino's and you say, oh, I'll deliver it for you free. They'll be like, okay, just take as much as you want. But how do you make money on that transaction is the real trick. So I think doing that was a real learning curve for us. And what we realized in that market, and this is the time when the market was really tough, we realized that we cannot lose money. And if you have to make money on every transaction in B2B, trust me, you'll have to really add a lot of value. You cannot just fake that value through any sort of a gimmick. It is real business that you have to get into, and you have to show that you can basically, that value is the profit that you essentially make. So I think in our journey we did that. Once we crossed over to the profitability bit, I think the larger challenge was, how do you then grow in a similar manner? You have proven your unit economics in a certain area, in a certain model. Now, can you scale that up? Can you really build that model out and continue creating an edge over competition? Because once you're in a few years of a journey, you'll always have competition. You'll have people who try to undercut you as well. There's like, if somebody does well, I think the good or the bad part of our industry is that they are like, competitors get created overnight in this ecosystem. So how do you ensure that you maintain your competitive differentiation, you maintain your margin, and then you grow from there? I think these are broadly the three spaces that I have experienced over a period of time. Again, might be different from a B2B versus B2C kind of world, but broadly these are the three areas of spectrum. And I think once we got into the growth momentum, it's always been like that. It's like every year, how do you grow? How do you improve your margin? How do you expand? And I think the interesting thing about our Indian demography is that every 5 years we probably have some sort of a market uncertainty. Sometimes COVID happens, sometimes something external happens, and you have to basically ensure that once that market turbulence is gone, then you emerge as a much stronger player than what you were probably when the turbulence was starting. So I think this has been broadly the journey that I would define. And yeah, happy to answer any question which helps this conversation.
No, this is very helpful, obviously. So great. So next I will jump to Ashwin. So done with a bit of logistics with Abhishek. And so Ashwin, can you give some light on the RBI compliances or like central banks compliances coming in your way, or how to comply at the same time, as well as being very seamless for your customers in all this cross-border payments, because you are still setting up the processes. Like your experience there, what all you can share and you can reveal here. Yeah.
Okay, it's a very interesting question. Thanks, Bipin. Okay, so I think like sort of like a great frame to have when you think of just payments, right? Like payments is just a regulated business. It's always been regulated at some level, and just for the nature of the topic, it will continue to be regulated. Cross-border payments in most countries in the world is even more regulated than domestic payments for a number of different reasons. The way we view regulations, right, is we actually like to think of regulation as a competitive advantage. And the reason for that is if you operate out of a country like, say, India, where you have like a number of regulations to comply with, that's amazing, right? Because just imagine the kind of like value you can provide if you can simplify that regulation like very simply. So let me give you like an actual example, right? If you are a payments processor in India and you want to comply with Indian regulations, then with respect to cross-border, then you will be considered what is called an OPGSP, or what is now called an OEIF. And OPGSP just stands for Online Payment Gateway Service Provider, right? Just think of it as the regulation that the RBI has provided, which enables payment processors like XFlow to operate. One of the things that the regulation stipulates is that processors like XFlow can only bring in $10,000 per transaction. Now, $10,000 per transaction is actually pretty small when you think of it from a B2B standpoint. Great. The way we think about it, we're like, wonderful, let's go solve that problem. And incidentally, and I did not mention this in my intro, XFlow actually went live today. Today is when we process like our first live transactions, which of course is like very exciting for us. And one of our key value adds is we've solved for the $10,000 limit, right? Like, so with us, right, you can process any amount of money per transaction, no hacks, nothing, right? And so while I can't talk about exactly how we've gone about solving it, because that unfortunately is company IP, I think the Uber level point I'll leave you with is the more sort of like regulation we see, the more excited we become, because that's the place where we can go and add value, right? So imagine like if you are operating out of, I don't know, I'm coming up with a name, but I don't really know if it's true, right? But imagine if you were operating out of Australia, and I don't know much about the Australian market, but imagine like Australia had like next to nothing regulations about cross-border. Well, then what value would we add, right? So that's the way we sort of like think of like the regulatory frame. So yeah, I hope that helps. Back to you, Bipin. Oh, and sorry, just like before I give it back, I seen the questions, right? The question that's being asked is, hey, is the $10,000 solve like compliant? It's 100% compliant, right? So one of our advisors who actually advises the company is an ex-RBI executive director. We've obviously engaged with the regulator as well. Like just to give you a sense, cross-border like payments infrastructure companies, and at least like sort of like the way we think, we are very boring companies, right? Like we're not looking to like build something, break something, or like those sorts of things, right? Like that's not the cut that we come from. So it takes time to build good infrastructure, just like it takes time to build good roads. Yeah, so like compliance is at the heart of what we do.
Also, Ashwin, would you like to cover this LRS ODI also a bit? Any, especially from Indian Central Bank point of view, because a lot of regulations has come in last 3 months. Anything do you think is relevant to this session here in audience? Would like to share your experience there?
Yeah, thanks, Bipin, for that question. So for folks that are unaware, right? So LRS stands for Liberalized Remittance Scheme. What it basically means is that as an individual who is looking to send money outside of India, you can only do this for a specific set of reasons. For example, if you have medical expenses or education expenses, or maybe you're looking to make an investment, right? So the Indian government has certain capital controls in place, and you can only do this up to a certain limit, right? For example, $250,000, right? Is I think like the typical limit. We've actually at XFlow, we're building a pure sort of like B2B business, and the liberalized remittance scheme sort of like applies more to like individuals. And so this is not like something that we have tried to solve for yet. Although it could be an interesting problem statement to solve for companies in India that are helping individuals make investments outside, right? But this is just something that we've not sharply gone after yet.
Oh, thanks, Ashwin. So actually, the session is very interesting. I'm very much pumped, and I'm just working on the questions we are getting on chat and how to make it more fruitful, because we have most payments, logistics, and overall the B2B commerce, and it is and we are getting and we as a team also very much meeting so many companies in the domain, and I can see in last 5 months we have done sort of 5 investments, and out of which 2 are in B2B, especially one is in commerce. Both of them are in one is in commerce and one is in logistics. So we are really seeing the trend, and lot of trend means in venture capital and the startup ecosystem. It means there was always that problem, but entrepreneurs are realizing and coming up with a solution, and forming a team and creating their own company. And VCs are also now excited about that space, and a lot of investments happening. That's how a sector is built. Like I remember when Shadowfax was built, it was investors were then open for hyperlocal investment, and smart entrepreneurs like Abhishek Bansal and his co-founders, they all came up with creating Shadowfax. And then because a lot of time what happens that there was always that sector and that problem existing, but funding was not happening, and venture capital is needed to from how you will sponsor the burn of that company for first 5 years when it is not profitable. So you need to raise venture capital, and that's how industry is created. Has been like e-commerce has been created, logistics has been created over last 15-20 years, when VC VC money started coming into India. So that's why we are very pumped about this space. So next we come to Pawan from Fasinza. So Pawan, so the industry you are operating in, it was always very lala type, like factories, procurement and brands. तो ठीक है, अभी बहुत सारे lot of D2C brands coming up since last 5 years. So but all the established large players, large brands, they were always there, and they were getting stuff manufactured in India, Vietnam, Bangladesh, China, global brands. Okay, so how you have been able to create your own, carve out your own niche here, and how you are actually making use of tech here, the tech you are giving to all the stakeholders of the ecosystem, and using it, you are building an ecosystem there. Okay, and how, this is first question, and I'm merging second question into this also. And how do you see you getting into credit business? Like we are seed investor in off business. They were into B2B, trade of construction materials like
Correct.
PVC, cement, and eventually after 4 or 5 years of their operation, sometime in 1819, they got into credit. Okay, so this is second part of my question. So you can take your time. You have four or
Sure.
5 minutes, and you please cover it for our fantastic set of audience here.
Yeah. I think coming to the first part, so obviously, like one good and the bad thing for us is that this is not a new industry that we are trying to create. It has always been there. Like you said, there have been a lot of lalas, middlemen, traders, buying houses, whatever you name them, importer, exporter, which have already always been there in this industry. There have always been factories, there have always been buyers, and this has always been like not just a domestic but an international industry. One good thing about this industry has been that because it is so labor driven, it has always moved to cheaper destinations where a vast amount of cheap labor has been available. And effectively, Asia obviously became the biggest hub. India, China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, others as well. So I think this is obvious. This was obviously a good thing for us because we did not have to struggle on what was the TAM and everything, and the TAM is obviously massive. But at the same time, I think we had to really answer for ourselves why now. And I think this is one question VCs obviously ask a lot in the pitches, generally for every startup, but like for us as well, it was very important to answer why now. Why couldn't this company be created 5 years back, 10 years back? What has happened in the world. And I think like for any other B2B startup as well, this is obviously a critical point. B2B transactions, B2B trade has always been there. So for us, in one of the biggest things that had happened in fashion industry was the boom of e-commerce. Now, if I talk about 2012 or even like 2015, 17, 18, fashion e-commerce was still not that big. Like I still remember 2000, probably like 15 or 16, when I was still in my first startup, people were questioning why would somebody buy clothes online? There's fitting issue, there's quality issue, there's size issue, whatnot. Or only the girls would buy it, men would never buy something, or the men would buy it because it's more standardized and stuff like that. So, and what eventually happened was that although like a lot of large brands also just refused to sell online. So, which effectively meant that like this business, if created at that time, so let me put it this way: come 2019, when we were researching for a business like Fashinza, we realized that the world had absolutely changed. I mean, obviously, there were so many D2C brands, new age challenger brands coming in, or Amazon selling on Amazon. But at the same time, even the legacy people were facing the heat. So a brand like W was facing heat from brands like Ux or Libas, who were becoming massive online, just online. And I think this is where we saw that the tectonic shift of online fashion becoming mainstream was coming up. It was probably not mainstream yet, but it was becoming mainstream. And every brand wanted to have their own online strategy. And I think this is where we saw the opportunity that online fashion results in requirement of a very different kind of a supply chain, which is faster, which is more experimentative, which is more agile, and hence they required a solution which did not exist in the legacy market. So, like Bipin, you can interject if you want me to dive on something. But I think as a B2B business for anyone, like not just for fashion, but for anyone else as well, it's very important to figure out what is the real need which has come up. And like everybody would tell you that B2B relations are very sticky. You would not normally change your supplier if the supplier is giving you a great result. That obviously becomes a great moat for B2B companies, but at the same time, it also becomes tough to break into new businesses. Why would somebody trust a startup like Fashinza, which has been in existence even today? Like we've been in existence for less than 3 years, while the suppliers we compete against have been in existence for almost like 40 years, 50 years, and have trusted relation. And biggest reason has been this tectonic shift in how the supply chains requirement for supply chains was changing. Obviously, COVID, China plus one, supply chain disruptions were a catalyst, but I think even if COVID had not happened, this was still there. So that's on understanding the Lala business and how Fashinza makes its niche. So we today make our niche in terms of how helping legacy or online or even like D2C brands actually build great online businesses through a super fast supply chain. That is what our moat is today. And the existing Lala people who used to work with very large retailers on very large quantities, very large order quantities per style or per SKU, just are not able to compete with this level of fragmentation. And hence, coming to your point of technology, because the fragmentation has increased a lot, and that is why the need for technology has also increased a lot. So, for example, just to give you an example, let's say a brand like Uniqlo. Uniqlo would work with a large exporter like Shahi Exports historically, and would, let's say, give them $10 million of business a year, and $10 million of business a year across maybe 10 styles or maybe 20 styles, because they wanted huge quantities per style. So it's very easy for one person to manage 10 styles, the entire production process. They can track on a piece of paper as well, send out an Excel report to the customer every week, and that works. You had 6 months to execute the order, which normally would take you 45 to 60 days. Now, come in today's world, e-commerce, which is super fast, there you still have a budget of $10 million to procure the garments over a year, but you want to do it instead of 2 times a year, you want to do it 12 times a year. So your average order cost reduces. Second, instead of 10 styles, you actually want to launch 1,000 styles in the market, test it out how it is selling, and online gives you infinite shelf space, infinite ideation, marketing, iterations, etc. So then you suddenly realize that your number of styles have increased 100x or even 1,000x. Your quantity per style has reduced by 100x or 1,000x, and hence the complexity which was initially able to be handled by only one person now suddenly requires 100 people to handle. And because you either put 100 people at work, which does not justify the economics at all. Sorry, I just put like probably so much jargon as well there. But just because the complexity increased a lot due to online fashion, made it essentially compulsory to have a solution like Fashinza's technology platform to be able to actually execute the orders, execute the production which is required in this world. So that's broadly on legacy industry, getting into technology and having a very strong buy now. Now, coming to the second part, credit, like any B2B commerce company would tell you, or even the Lalas would also tell you, that B2B is always about credit. So you have to give credit to your customer and you get some credit from your suppliers. As simple as that. You need to give credit because your customers, who are businesses, will only be able to sell their inventory over a certain period of time, and hence they require some working capital or some credit support to fund their business and purchase of inventory. Now, credit is obviously, so you can either take credit as a necessary evil, or you can take credit as a great catalyst to actually support your customers. Now, initially when we started, we used to think of credit as just another necessary evil where we have to put in our working capital and hence maybe give a 30-day payment terms to our customer while pay our suppliers just on delivery and hence require 30 days of working capital. But slowly we started realizing that by giving that 30 or even 45 days credit to our customers, we actually increase their purchasing power. So earlier, if they only had a capital of $1 million and they were only able to purchase goods worth $1 million, now they can actually come and purchase goods worth $2 million, which can actually be sold because they had a distribution which could absorb $2 million of goods. So you are helping your customer double your business, and because you are the one providing the credit, the entire business actually comes to you. So that is why credit actually becomes a great catalyst and great lever to help your business succeed. But at the same time, it's also very risky as well. Because if your customer does not end up paying you, or if your customer defaults, then you run a huge risk. So effectively, like you mentioned, you gave a great example of off business. And I think the way that they have run credit has been effectively like running an NBFC. Now they obviously have an NBFC and stuff, but even before they had an NBFC, they used to run credit internally like an NBFC would do. And I think this is something that we also do. We don't have an NBFC. We are not in per se a credit business. We're not an NBFC or a lender. But the way to run credit in B2B is actually that you have to behave like an NBFC. You have to have internal risk control. You have to have a very separate risk and finance team, which has complete autonomy of deciding who gets credit, how much credit they get. And only then you can actually run a successful business and help and take credit as a great catalyst instead of a great evil. It's obviously a double-edged sword, I think. And people have realized so many businesses have actually gone down because of credit historically as well, even in new startup world as well. And it is very imperative for founders, especially those who do not come from a finance or a trading background, to actually realize the value of working capital and credit very quickly in their journeys. Sorry, I took a lot of time, I think.
I know, but this was very helpful, Pawan, because we got a lot of questions about Fasinza when we invited questions from the audience which did RSVP with us, because many of them have heard that Fasinza has raised this much money, and very great team, but normal audience are still not familiar what is the exact business model, because it is pure B2B. So
Correct.
people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, they are just researching on Google and it's not available. So that's why we got a lot of questions. So your answer really helped. It was needed. So next we come to Bharat. So Bharat, as Ashwin covered the cross-border compliances and payments is all about, taking care of a lot of compliances, and we can't ignore them, all the regulations by central banks. But in your case, logistics cross-border, still it is by default, among common man, common women in audience, that cross-border shipping, all these containers, exports, imports, it's a hassle. Customs में सामान पड़ा हुआ रहता है एक महीने तक, दो महीने तक खराब हो जाते हैं. Especially during COVID, even Abhishek would have seen a lot of such things at Shadowfax, because they also they also have branch of cross-border, but you are completely focused on this. So, like, maybe in just 1 or 2 minutes, you would like to cover some special, quick, takeaways from this experience you had real time.
Sure, Bipin. So I think from our space, right, cross-border supply chain space. So even before starting, we spoke to multiple customers, right? And our customers are typically these MSMEs in the 50 to 250 crore turnover space, right? Three things kept on coming up again and again, right? And they continue to, right? So the first thing was just pricing stability and competitiveness. So unlike large companies which work on contracted rates, which remain stable through the year, these MSMEs work on spot rates. It could change, let's say, on a weekly basis or even more frequently. And they're generally not competitive, right? The second part is like what you were talking about, just customs and everything, right? Like there's no transparency in the end-to-end supply chain. The entire shipment lifecycle is managed offline. There are multiple stakeholders in this whole supply chain, right? There are truckers, warehousing companies, custom brokers, liners. And if you look at it, majority of the communication between these entities is managed via emails. We actually ran some benchmarking exercises, right? It can take up to 60 emails to ship one container, happy case, from one country to the other. And that's where a lot of challenges happen, right? And because of this opaqueness in this whole ecosystem, right, like trust becomes a challenge at times. Issues are managed at times reactively, which can cause large impacts financially to MSMEs, right? Getting the shipments across on time is very, very critical. And compliance is just one of those things interlinked across the space, right? Now imagine if you're a new, like I'll just take an example, let's say a new D2C brand selling food items in India, wanting to go to the US, figuring out first what are the requirements to get an FDA license. Once you get it, I mean, just figuring that part is opaque, right? Once you figure that part out, then going and figuring out every time I need to make a shipment, what are the documents required, which is not really transparent online. I think these are all the challenges that exist in the industry, and that's what we're solving by building out the infrastructure where brands and B2B customers or MSMEs can come and they can seamlessly ship their inventory globally.
Got it. So next we will jump to Abhishek. So So Abhishek, like this is very broad question. It's not a question, I will say a topic in itself. So ONDC, logistics. So how you are taking it up and how you are, complying and how you're leveraging it, I will say. So it's very broad topic. You can start anywhere, close anywhere. Like maybe you can share your takeaways, which is relevant for this audience.
I think ONDC is a very open-ended problem right now for us. I think what we have done is at least we understand that this is a trend which is going to happen in the next 4-5 years, and I think we have taken an early advantage of directly integrating with ONDC. So currently, our services, be it a 30-minute delivery or a national delivery, are currently integrated on the ONDC platform. I think a huge debate around ONDC and the whole idea of who owns the customer experience is a big debate that we still are not very clear with. I think, see, in India, building e-commerce has been a mammoth play. Okay, like companies like Flipkart, Amazon, Snapdeal have spent billions of dollars building that customer experience. And if anything goes wrong, today the customer feels like a king. They can go online, they can write a review, they can ask for a refund, they can return a product. The problem of managing that customer and that experience and that owning that experience is of the platform. I think where we are still not very clear in the ONDC network is how does that ownership transfer, okay, and who owns the experience? See, in e-commerce, 98% of the deliveries happen right, okay, but there is a 2% problem where you have fraudsters, you have complaints, you have some of the other issue happening, okay, and today and especially the Indian demographic is very complex. Like the kind of scams that can happen, the kind of things which can happen on e-commerce, you really need a very strong like intelligence around data, machine learning to predict some of those patterns, control some of those patterns over a period of time. In the ONDC framework, I think what we internally call it, they've created a happy flow. Okay, like if everything goes right, that's how the system needs to go in. But like anywhere in the world, I think nothing is always right. And those exceptions flow in, who owns up that exception, who's the owner of that experience is not very clear. And until you solve for that, you can never own the customer. Okay, you cannot never own the trust of that customer. When you go online and shop, be it from a Swiggy or a Zomato or a Flipkart or an Amazon, you're actually shopping on basis of trust. So I think that is still something that the folks are discovering. We are working very closely with them. We are advising them also on some of the policies on how they should structure their logistics policies on the platform to make some of these things happen. But our sense is it is going to take a bunch of time. It is going to take at least 3 to 4 quarters to get the basics right. And only then we can actually test it out like based on the solution that is being arrived at as to like whether it is working also or not. But see, there is value to the billions of dollars that e-commerce companies have spent in the country to build intelligence, which we are still not very clear who is going to own up in the ONDC framework. I think that's our view. Still very early days. Overall, the concept is novel. I think it will eventually happen where you can have a more democratic platform from any seller to any customer to connect, and logistics being like how payment gateways are to connect between the seller and the buyers. But typically, I think how do you create those unhappy flows? How do you manage that customer experience is something we are still to solve for.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhishek, for adding your very candid overall experience and opinion, because you are having first-hand experience with this overall setup. So thanks. Next we come to Ashwin. So Ashwin, in like jumping from again logistics to payments. So Ashwin, my question is, now payments B2C, if it is B2C or B2B, with time it is being simplified, and like Like we invested in Razorpay in their seed round, and it was enabling our merchants to come online, take payments. That was also a challenge, and it was a very broken experience with the existing incumbent player that time, CC Avenue and all those players that time. So 7 years back when Razorpay started. So, but in their case also the margin is very less. Okay, but the TAM and the volume of transaction they were processing um, has been very huge, and that's why they have good revenues. And as a company, their burn is not very high. Okay, so if you compare with other sector unicorns where they have very high burns, most of them. So in your case also cross-border payments with time there will be players and it will become bit commoditized, so the margin will be lesser with time. So how do you so obviously it's a problem which you may face after 1 year or 2 year, but you already have your own opinion and already you would have experience when you are negotiating with your customers and creating your margin structure. So how you are seeing overall this thing?
Yeah, thanks, Bipin. It's a very insightful question. I'll answer it in two parts, right? So I think like the first part, which is cross-border payments getting simplified. Let me tell you why I think we're a long way away from like cross-border payments getting simplified. So right, so we all live in India, right? So we've all interacted with UPI at some point of time or the other, right? So we're used to the fact that, hey, if Ashwin is going to send Bipin money, all Ashwin needs is Bipin's phone number, and then like money movement is almost instantaneous. Bipin and Ashwin will get notifications, right? It's almost free, if not free, right? And now let me contrast this with cross-border payments. Cross-border payments suffer from lack of payment guarantees, right? Like businesses today have no real idea, right? Like when cross-border payments remitted will reach the end beneficiary or the other way around. There's no real-time notification system for success or failure, certainly no tracking mechanism. Most times you'll get to know about failures only when suppliers reach back out to the business and say, hey, where's my money, right? Like reconciliation, right? Like is another sort of like classical problem. The other thing that I'll point out with cross-border payments, why it's not so simple, it's expensive. Like cards, for example, like using cards will on a cross-border basis will cost you somewhere between 4 to 5% of your transaction, depending on who you're using. Or if you're using PayPal, it'll cost you 7%. Or if you're using just like Swift wire transfers, just depending on how much sort of like negotiation power you have, it'll cost you like a couple of percentage points. And finally, I will also say that domestic money movement over say something like UPI is instant, but cross-border money movement over cards, banking rails, wires can take several days, right? In addition, you're likely to get punged by your banking relationship manager for missing documents after you've initiated the transfer, right? Or you've gotten money. So I would say there's a lot of work still to be done to actually simplify cross-border money movement. Now addressing the second part of your question, which is right, like how will we add value over a period of time? And I think Abhishek from Shadowfax made this very important point, which is you have to continuously add value to your customer, which in this case is a business. In that regards, our thinking is not original. We're very inspired by companies like Razorpay, like Stripe, like AWS. All of these companies have a core product, right? Like a core base layer, which they call their infrastructure layer. So in our case, that infrastructure layer is essentially enabling money to move in and out seamlessly. And then over a period of time, what we will do is we will build products which are very SaaS-like on top of that integration layer. So what do these SaaS products look like? For example, if you wanted to send money out of India today, and you were engaged in services, you would have to fill up Form 15CA and Form 15CB, which is essentially just calculation of tax. Wonderful, right? Like I can tell you no business that we've spoken to that enjoys the process of filling up these forms or even paying a chartered accountant 1,500 rupees while filling up these forms. Wonderful, we'll do that work for you, right? Like we'll automate that. Or businesses, for example, will say, hey, we need credit, right? Wonderful, we love that, right? So we'll essentially solve for the credit problem as well, because obviously money is moving through the pipes that we're setting up. right? So we have insight, at least in terms of how money is moving. So we'll add, right, like a product over there. So the point I'm trying to make over here is there's an infrastructure layer, there's a product layer, and the idea basically is to move upwards from the infra to the product layer. Very much like how AWS does, right? Like 11 years ago, or 10 years or 12 years ago, when AWS started up, people went to AWS to buy compute and storage. That's it. Today, you're buying Route 53 or EKS or, right, like a DynamoDB. All of this is ultimately just products built on top of the same infra layer. So that's how we think about the world, Bipin.
Yeah, got it. Very insightful, Ashwin. So I'm a bit scared also that too much jumping we are doing between logistics, payments, commerce. Is it getting overloaded for audience? But still we are trying to make it a very seamless absorption of gyan by our our founders. They are running their businesses in this B2B, and they have great PMF, or they are at the verge of PMF, and so we are also very much excited to with this transfer of experience from our speakers to our audience. So next is we come to Bharat. So Bharat, I don't know how relevant this question is for Xhipment, but you can pick the part of it which you think is which you find genuine and valid for your business. So like you are into shipment of products both on export side, on import side, and there is this global landscape, this Ukraine war, recession, China lockdown is still going on. We don't know what is going on, but something is going on. We keep hearing here and there. So like ETA, like estimate time of your arrival of your product. So if there are strikes, there are some global landscape. So all this shipments you are doing through sea route, so it is generally time taking. So how you are tackling it, giving transparency of duration of shipment and estimated arrival time for product of your customers, and how you are able to design a automated time calculator for great experience for your B2B customers. And also second part of this question, what is your sales strategy, how you are acquiring your customers?
So on the first one, right, just like tracking and just making sure that shipments reach on time, right? Like I'll break into two parts, right? First is so there are multiple asset owners in the whole supply chain, like I mentioned earlier, right? And each one of them has their own TAT to be able to operate what they need to do. So the first thing is that building out the infrastructure so you can collect all that information and be able to synthesize it in the right manner. That's the most important part, right? Because today what happens is in a lot of, let's say, just B2B transactions that happen offline, while the data is there, it's just lost in emails, just lost in communication, right? So the first layer is just being able to get that information. Once we build that infrastructure there, the second is being able to understand when are things going wrong and how do you proactively do dive and saves. And we talk to a lot of our customers, right? Like they also do understand that a lot of these macro environment things that we don't control, right? And nobody does, like Ukraine war, for example, right? Ships could get stopped. But what the important part is being able to understand early enough in their shipment journey that there are problems and being able to come up with solutions to mitigate to the best possible extent possible. I think that's the critical part that we're solving for. Delays happen, customers understand that, but finding solutions very quickly is the critical aspect of it. So I think that's where we are. And there are a couple of things, right? It's just about tracking the right metrics, being extremely proactive in communication, and figuring out what are the ways you can go around the problems that are there. So that's on the first part. On the second part, on the B2B sales strategy, I think, so while we're still early in the stage, our strategy has always been that we provide disproportionate and quantifiable value to our customers, right? I think that's the only reason why, like what Abhishek was also saying, right? In a B2B world, customers will come back to us. And second, like how Pawan was mentioning, right? Like how do you actually convince somebody who's already working with a supplier to be able to go to another one? So I think our strategy always has been that, hey, we go and talk to our customers, we understand their pain points. And at times we even design the supply chain that is required for them to be able to improve their operations, their price points. And you start with pilots, you start by showing value that can be created, and then you start scaling up the business from there, rather than from day one, just trying to build out something that might not work. So I'll pause there. Happy to answer any more questions on that one.
Yeah. Very, very helpful, Bharat. And now next we move to Abhishek. So Abhishek, maybe very your trade secret. Maybe you would like to share a part of it. So simple question: what is your B2B sales strategy? How you got all this top client? I remember in 15 to 16, you had almost 25% of the brands you had pitched. Huge conversion. So what is your that, and try to cover it in very short. Like there is something you follow. Okay. So which has made you making great sales and converting in first of your business 2015 16, and also building a great sales team. Okay. And also maintaining a very good customer experience. So there is second part of question. Okay. So yeah, maybe
That's a very good question. I don't have a one-line direct answer to it, and forgive me if I go long about what you have just asked me. Uh, I think, the thing is that you need to create a product which sells easily. If you cannot sell what you have built in 5 minutes in a meeting, trust me, you have built something wrong. If you have to take 10 meetings to convince someone to sell. Now, the person who's on the other side should be able to actually like what you're selling in 5 minutes. Now, convincing him to trust you for that idea might take some bit of time. But fundamentally, if you're selling something which the other person is saying, no, I don't need this. Why should I need this solution? If that is the conversation, I think you will never be able to sell or scale up. Okay. I think the first conversation is, what are you building? Are you building something which the people want? So I think the first part of the process is, you go to your client, you ask them what you want. You go to 10 clients and then you say, does everybody want the same thing in your target audience? If everybody is wanting the same thing, and this is a rule that we still apply, that you go to 10 customers, if 8 customers say, yes, we like this sales page, then you start building that product. So before you even build anything, create a sales page. You go out there, you try selling it. If that product is getting sold in, let's say, 8 out of 10 customers, you then go and build that particular product, and then you basically again hit the market and try selling it. So I think the secret is that people should definitely have a need to what you have built, rather than being a push-based mechanism. I think that's step one. The second step is that, no amount of sales team that you can hire will actually do the sales for you beyond a certain point. Okay, you have to sit in front of the customer. You have to always hear what the customer wants. And as a founder, as an employee, as a senior executive, I think, and this is one of the advices I have followed over the last couple of years and learned it the hard way at times. I think 60 to 70% of your time should always go in front of the customer, just listening in what people are saying and talking about your product. They like it, they not like it, whatever it is, you need to be in front of the customer. You need to build those relationships, and you need to know when to strike with your sales pitch. Okay, it might be that you might meet 100 customers, create a network, but eventually when your product is ready, when the market is right, then you go out there and pitch it. But having those relationships, having exposure to the customer is very important. If you think that you can be a product manager or a techie, and we'll hire a salesperson who will go and do the sales talking, and sales is like a mundane stuff. No, that's not how it works in B2B. If you are a techie, you need to sit in front of a customer. If you are a product manager, you need to sit in front of a customer. This is what we teach all our team members. Nobody can come to us and say that, boss, I am a techie, why should I need all these inputs to come from a sales guy. You're like, no, you need to attend a sales meeting. How will you know where the pain is? Okay, I think that's the second piece of it, just to build a certain culture. I think the third thing is that once you have sold something and when you want to grow, uh, your customer experience, your product experience, your product hook should basically drive growth. It should not be a pull-based or sorry, a push-based product. People should be calling you up and saying that, oh, can we scale a model? Or in our case, oh, we have expanded to the city. Can we open 10 more cities? Now that essentially is a factor in our, and again, I'm being very contextual to our business. In our business, that can only happen if you price the product right and if you provide the right experience. I can say, oh, I'm providing a crazy awesome experience, but my price is twice of what the market pricing is. Nobody will work with us. Okay, your pricing has to be right and your experience has to be right, and people will automatically come to you if you just maintain those relationships. So I think that's how the product strategy should be created, keeping in mind what the client wants. So, and the rest of the thing will fall in place. If you're sitting with the client, if you're constantly building a rigor around meeting clients, trust me, you'll get your own ideas. How the product should evolve, you'll get ideas just by listening into people. And see, the interesting thing is, if you're building a product company, you need to ensure that if you meet 20 clients, at least 80% of them speak the same problem statement out. If you go to every client will have some sort of a unique problem. You don't want to build a services company. If you go and listen to only one, you'll only get a service point of view which might not be scalable across the board. But if you go and speak with like a bunch of clients and then create a certain requirement, you are at least sure that, oh, I've met such a huge base. Out of that, so many people actually want this as a problem statement, and then you basically create a product around it. So I think I would say it's a product plus sales sort of a combination. The way you need to think about sales. Otherwise, if you build a product and then you go out there, hit the market, and they're like, no, we don't want to buy this. It's not a problem. Can you, instead of this, can you do this? Then your entire effort goes for a toss. Yeah.
Yeah, very relevant. Obviously, you were very candid in terms of what exactly work in B2B sales, especially logistics, and has been very helpful. So, one question we have got from many audience here, as well as before this session, which is about how to form a founding team and right founding team members, how to hire them or onboard them. So I'm not covering that in this session because we have covered that question very much in detail in our past session. In one of that, Abhishek Bansal was also part. So we have done a lot of conversation on this, and videos are available on Titan Capital LinkedIn page and YouTube page. So we will post it separately after this session. All the conversation has been captured in that video, which our team kept sharing in last 6-7 months. So we will share it again. You all can refer to that, where there was a session by Abhishek from Shadowfax, Raghav from Urban Clap, Ravi from Mo Engage. So we are not covering it here. So let's do all these specific questions, which is very much specific to B2B for more takeaway for our audience. So next is the second last question is from Pawan. So Pawan, how you were able to have top brands also as your client, like Zara was there, is there, or Wavefproof. You're not only targeting startups but also large fashion apparel brand of not India but also global. So they always have had big procurement team and everything they have. How you were able to convert them?
Sure. I think there are two parts to the sales strategy. So like first is obviously how do you reach out to them and how do you open the doors? And second is actual selling. So actual selling only starts when you actually sit in front of the customers when it comes to enterprise selling. Now, first is number one, obviously you need to have a product which is great. And I think like why we were able to convert those meetings was because we had a product which was very relevant at that point of time. So forget about like, let's say, I think I saw that question and somebody was also saying like, why won't they work directly with factories and why would they work with you? I think number one thing is that, like I said, we don't specialize in, let's say, helping us, somebody like a Zara, work with the largest exporter in India, Shahi Exports. Like large brand to large factory is just not going to work at all. There's no real value add that we can add there. And the value that we add, and which is again, the value is required because everybody wants to go online, is for working with large brands to work with small and mid-sized factories in a very compliant and easy manner. And I think this is what was the need of the hour for somebody like a Zara or even for other large customers. And we just went to them at the right time with the right pitch, and hence were able to convert the sales. At the same time, I think like one thing that I can say in this industry, especially, is that like everybody, B2B buyers are very logical. So they won't go ahead, they won't take emotional decisions. But at the same time, if you go to them with a very compelling solution, which they are searching for or they are struggling with, they are going to accept it. They are going to say that, okay, let's try it out. I think one good thing about our business is also that they can just try it out. They don't need to make a complete overhaul of their entire sourcing, and we just go and say that we become the exclusive sourcing partner. So if you're doing something like that, then it's probably a tougher sale, and I'm not the right person to answer that. Now, second part is like actually getting an entry and getting to that customer, opening up the doors, which I would say is the toughest part for us. There, I think a lot of it comes down to having the right strategy for marketing in place. And B2B marketing is a lot about actually building out a brand, showing the value to the customer so that they trust the brand instead of just, let's say, a CTA and then you provide an inquiry or something like that. So understanding how B2B marketing is very different from a normal marketing was very critical, and we actually took a long time to figure that out. And second part was also like getting right people who have the right experience, who have the right network, and especially hiring locals where you want to sell. Like enterprise selling, sitting in India, selling to a customer in the US, I've honestly never seen that work. And this is where we hire the right people in the right places. We have people in the US, we have people in the Europe, we have people in Middle East. Especially when it comes to large ticket sizes, enterprise customer, it is absolutely critical. I think we've seen that just working again and again, and we've also seen that failing again and again when we try to do that sitting out of India, let's say relying on inbound calls and stuff like that. Did I answer your question, Bipin?
Yeah. Pretty much, and it was very helpful, Pawan. So especially companies who are starting and winning big clients in first year was almost a nightmare maybe 10 years back. But
Absolutely.
now, with the help of great team and the speed of execution and the tech, our companies have been able to win large clients in right first year of their operations. So, and same thing which even Ashwin, XFlow and Bharat Xhipment are also witnessing in their first year of their journey. So we are really in the golden era and in right place also at right time, which is our country called India. So, and we at Titan are very open to invest in more and more companies into e-commerce, payments, and last 1 year we have taken a lot of bets where like Maker is a company where they help brands getting their electronics products manufactured inside India, in India. Like a lot of brands were importing it from China and then private labeling it and then selling in India, but now they are enabling manufacturing in our country. So we invested in them this year, and there is a food brand called Suit 42, which is helping brands to get their food processed in different manufacturing units in our country called Suit 42. So we invested in them. So there are almost 15 bets we have taken in last 12 months in overall B2B space. Last month, we invested in a company which is helping tile ceramic manufacturers with this. They are supplying them specialty chemical, helping them manufacturing that, and also also helping them exporting their products abroad on one side they are helping them with raw materials in manufacturing, on the other side they are also helping them with giving them demand from outside India. So we are really excited about the teams coming up and enabling the space, and completely picking up very unorganized earlier this Lala mindset businesses, and we are learning with them, and we are seeing very quick PMF, which was almost a nightmare in B2B. 2 साल 3 साल में तो कुछ हिलता भी नहीं था in B2B, and now things are being moved, and we are witnessing it firsthand. We are very much excited, and we are now reviewing companies who are enabling pharma manufacturing for brands globally in India, and we are yet to take a bet there, and we are looking for teams there. So we are quite open to review more and more businesses, because we see this as a purely blue ocean, and a huge land grab opportunities there. But B2B businesses are full of hustle. Like I have seen Abhishek Bansal, who invested in Shadowfax 7.5 years back. Since day zero, I have been seeing him, because we have our first check into the company. So really, like Abhishek Bansal is another name of hustle. So we have seen him really hustling, getting his first set of clients, operations, managing customer experiences, a lot of ups and downs, and but now it's 1,000 crore plus revenue company into logistics, and they have been able to mark their brand and name in large logistics industry in country. So Titan Capital is quite open to make more and more bets in smart, hardworking teams trying to enable a category, a sector in B2B. So yeah, maybe one last question, which I would like to ask Ashwin. So Ashwin, how you are tackling acquiring customers and your GTM? So this is the last question for the session, because payments is altogether a different domain. So yeah.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Bipin. Again, our GTM strategy, I would say fairly like we've just looked at sort of like other companies in the space that we admire, and we're trying to see how we can use that GTM strategy for ourselves. So broadly speaking, we build payments infrastructure, right? Like we build APIs essentially, right? And so we broadly go after two types of I would say two main profiles, right? Like so one is sort of like the a business that understands technology, that perhaps has their own sort of like engineering teams. They can use our APIs or they can use our dashboard and they can kind of like get started, right? But I would say the real uptick, right? Like the real sort of like volume, right? At least in India, lies with existing platforms. Like there is a long tail of SMEs, MSMEs in India that have already been acquired by someone like a Tally or a Zoho or an Intuit, right? Like this has already happened. Now think of someone like Tally. Tally has its own invoicing software, its own accounting software, right? They actually offer the ability to do domestic payments already, right? They don't make a lot of money there for a number of different reasons, but they have it. Today, their merchants that they have acquired want to make cross-border payments through Tally, but Tally doesn't offer that product. And so in our case, what we will do is we will offer the infrastructure to Tally. Tally will brand it as, I'm coming up with something, Tally Pay, right? Or something like that. And they will then enable that for the hundreds of thousands of merchants that they actually already have, right? Imagine someone like a Grow, when this is the LRS use case that we like talked about. Right, like so, enabling Grow consequently grows customers to actually use the infrastructure that we build. So, given that we are an infrastructure company, right, those are primarily sort of like the two profiles that really interest us. So, direct merchants that understand technology, right, and then I would say sort of like platforms that we can enable for scale. I'll give you like a fun fact. So today, right, like, so everyone's heard of Shopify, right? So, and when everyone thinks of Shopify, they think of Shopify, the e-commerce company. And Shopify is a public company, so you can actually go look at their financials. Today, roughly 50% of Shopify's bottom line is through payments. So think about that for a second, right? Pure payments, not the e-commerce monthly revenue that they earn. 50% of that bottom line is through payments. And who's powering payments for them? It's Stripe. All of Shopify payments is 100% Stripe. So as Shopify, the platform grows, Stripe just comes along for the ride, right? So I would say those are our two broad segments. Apart from that, right, like we're in very sort of like early stages. And so obviously we've reached out to a bunch of people that may not actually fit this, profile, but we want to work with them and see how we can like make them successful. So I would say sort of like those two broad categories and then the one-off.
So thank you everyone for joining us for this session, and our team really worked hard for making it more meaningful and more seamless and capturing all the important critical part of the agenda we picked up.
Thank you for attending Titan Talks. We believe that this session added value to you. If you are interested in participating in a dialogue with us about fundraising, incubations, etc., please do write to us at startups@titancapital.vc, and we would love to engage in a discussion with you.